Hi everyone, so this is an example of me talking through a real student example of a English language paper 2 section B, the second part of section B, which is the creative writing on a language issue for a non-specialist audience. Now I'm showing you this example because the first thing I'm going to show you is actually the length of it. It's actually essentially 3 pages. If I take them all out, it's 3 pages. It's not massively exhaustive. She's obviously planned this quite well on the actual exam paper, but you can see how she kind of tailors some of the ideas about gender for a non-specialist audience and how she really positions her audience, as well as explaining some of those language issues. Now this one for AO2 was 20 out of 20, and for AO5 was 8 out of 10. And we'll talk about why that was in a minute. But equally, I think this will be quite reassuring because you'll see there are some things that she does which are not necessarily perfect. And actually, it gives you a sense of what a real one of these looks like. So the first thing we can see here is she's got a headline. And the examiner has put AO5 subheading. Okay, so we've got AO5, specific heading, women do what you want. She's underlined it. She's put it in capitals. It's really clear. Then she's put this subheading. Again, AO5. You say women don't use that language. I say women do what you want. So we've got a device there. We've got this parallel phrasing. So she'd also be picking up marks here for using devices as well. Now, she starts here with an engaging opening. Where she kind of contextualizes women's issues and women's language. So she says, it's an age-old fact that for centuries people have been trying to control women. Look at her use of punctuation and everything. It's very, very, very precise for intended effect on the audience. It's an age-old fact that for centuries people have been trying to control women. What they wear, who they marry, if they work, and now how they speak. Yawn. So she's doing all of this intentionally. And we've also got this use of satire and kind of humour for her audience. Now, she loses an opportunity here really to specify her audience. It's quite obvious, I think, that she's writing for a kind of young contemporary female audience, but she hasn't necessarily indicated that. So at the top of the paper, I would definitely write publication, cosmopolitan audience, women aged 18 to 35, or whatever your audience is, just to really specify that to the examiner. Why are women always made out to be wrong or weak or submissive to men, especially in the workplace? Again, more punctuation used specifically for impact here. She's used a rhetorical question there. And all of this is AO5. She's not yet picking up any linguistic marks, AO2. Instead, it's all AO5. Now, she makes an error here with her first piece of AO2. This is where her AO2 begins. She says, theorist Cheshire conducted a study showing that for male and female doctors, males use more aggravated imperatives. She misspells aggravated. Learn how to spell that word if you're not sure. When talking to patients, whereas female doctors mitigated their imperatives using phrases such as, would you mind, or could I just ask you to? Now, look at the different ways in which she has glossed and explained things. So, first of all, the examiner has put a cross here. That's because she's actually used the wrong theorist, and you probably recognise that yourself. But notice how she still gets 20 out of 20. So, it's natural that you might make some slips in the exam. But look at how she does the AO5 thing in terms of accommodating her audiences. She goes back and she realises she's said aggravated imperatives, but not explained what one of those is. So she's gone back and put in demands. She's also explained mitigated their imperatives using phrases such as, would you mind? Or could I just ask you to? So there's a couple of different methods you can use to make things really clear to your audience. So she's also not only AO5, but also doing AO2, she's also doing AO5 here because she's aware of her audience. So there's kind of 2 ways you can do this. You can either gloss and just put it in brackets, or you can explain, this basically means, or you can use examples. But any of those will work really, really well. This was seen as weakness by many males. However, Cheshire's study concluded that patients were more compliant to the speech patterns usually used by female doctors. Surprised? Well, don't be. Now, I love the way she does this. because this student uses rhetorical questions to move yourself on, and that's a good AO5 tip. Rhetorical questions help you move to the next topic, the next aspect, the next argument. So use those to topic shift. Use direct address, because that's really, really powerful the way that she does that. Keeps it chatty, keeps it flowing, moves it from issue to issue. Surprised? Well, don't be. Notice how it always sounds like she's talking to you. It shouldn't come as a shock that patients and people in general prefer a request rather than a command, yet women are still seen as weaker for using these mitigations. Why is it that women are criticised for using vocal fry because it sounds dumb, and yet men aren't being noticed for using spoken features that frankly are just a bit rude? Now again, she's still got a good AO5 voice here, but there is one issue. She talks about vocal fry here and mitigations, but she hasn't explained what vocal fry is. So there's a lack of glossing here, which the examiner has pointed out is not happy with that. However, she does topic shift again and keeps it chatty, keeps it light. Let me pull your attention to another language theorist. Robin Lakoff. Lakoff is a woman. Not only that, but she's also responsible for the dominance theory. The dominance theory states that men dominate women in terms of language and that women typically use certain features because they are the weaker sex. Now, we know in gender that we don't make sweeping generalizations like that. That's actually not what the theory says. We certainly don't say that women are the weaker sex or anything like that. We say that women typically have been associated with features deemed to be examples of weakness, and we know that actually those features gain more compliance, are often considered to be more powerful if used artfully. So actually that's not what was said by the theorists, and no descriptive linguist would ever say women are the weaker sex. That's absolutely not the way they would use language. So the examiner again is not very happy with that. It states that while women use more hedges to mitigate certain subjects and face saving strategies, men use other features such as interruptions. While women use interruptions typically because they were excited and engaged in the topic of conversation, men use them more often, 44 times more to be exact, but use them to assert themselves as a dominant speaker in the conversation. Now that seems like a lot of information about the theory. Don't be afraid to present all the idea about the theory. Just explain who the person is, why they're relevant, what the theory is, in a bit more detail and in a slightly more chatty and informative way than you would with an examiner where you're taking it as read that they already know about those theories. So you see, it seems to me, so again we've got that topic shift, which is good, that use of that discourse marker. It seems to me, and again we've got that direct address, that according to Lakoff's dominance theory, it's men that are the issue, not women. Yet women are constantly put down, and not only with their use of language, but language has also been allocated to criticise women. So this is good. She's doing that challenge of the AO2. Well, the research seems to indicate this. I think the thing we really need to think about is this. So she kind of turns it on its head, and that's quite challenging in terms of that AO2. Again, she's really cleverly using these rhetorical questions. Did you know? Moving on. There are only 27 derogatory words to describe men, and for women, over 400. See how she uses quite a lot of these statistics, but she does it in quite a accessible way. You know, you're not overfacing your audience with loads of stats, you're using them for effect. So I think the issue we need to address, notice how she aligns herself with the audience, is not the use of women's language, but the perception of women. What if I told you that I could give an example that suggests power in conversations is nothing to do with gender? Again, cleverly using rhetorical questions to introduce new topic areas that she wants to think about and to engage her audience. Well, the courtroom study conducted by O'Barr and Atkins concluded just that. The study was conducted by assessing the spoken language features of people included in trial cases of both genders and a variety of positions within the court. They found that the features typically assigned to women were used by the people with the least power in the room, and that it had nothing to do with gender, but with power and status. So again, that's a challenge, isn't it? She's challenging it with other research. In fact, it's about power and status, not. That study is proof, in my opinion, that whether the woman is the weaker member of the conversation is completely circumstantial. I do not think that just because females typically use hedged imperatives or apologise when interrupting, or even use a bit of vocal fry, again, the examiner has put defined, please, you've not done that we should be judged and criticised because it's just speech. And even if we did stop, people would find another language feature, another clothing complaint, another way to try and control women, to try and dominate us. So next time you feel the need to criticise someone's speech, ask a man why he needs to interrupt so much. So again, we've got an engaging conclusion. And notice how she takes, I'm just going to write at the top, a descriptive standpoint. You must be a descriptivist. You're using your knowledge as a linguist, and linguists are descriptivists. You certainly wouldn't be saying, this is why teenagers' language is terrible. That wouldn't be appropriate. You want to take a linguistic outlook and be challenging what the everyman thinks about language and re-educating them. So she's really thought carefully about the construction of this overall piece. It's interesting to see that she's only really used 3 theories. She makes some slips with them, but it's convincing enough. And what she's picking up marks for here is being challenging and evaluative. And actually you can see that from what the examiner says. AO2, clear overview of relevant linguistic issues, evaluative and challenging, clarifies issues helpfully, so she explains them well. This basically means that, well, if we consider that idea, surprise, well, you shouldn't be. Uses the form convincingly. It's obviously an article, isn't it? She's considering an audience. It's not a essay by any means. And she's got well-documented viewpoints. She's backing them up with examples and things like that and making it really clear to a non-specialist. However, they're only giving her 8 out of 10 because she doesn't gloss on some terms like vocal fry, but she's creative. She uses devices for effect. There's cohesion from the start to the end with the engaging opening and the engaging conclusion, and she writes effectively overall. What they've taken a couple of marks away for is that lacking awareness of her audience sometimes on some of the examples and some of the terms. So just make sure that you're always saying things like eminent linguist David Crystal suggests, or David Crystal, an expert in language and technology, suggests, or you're saying use of initialisms such as CBA. You must be giving those examples and making it really, really clear for your audience. So hopefully there you've got a few tips and you can see what a real one looks like to equip you now to be able to do your tech piece. Make sure you start with a basic 5-point plan. You need, what's your headline going to be? Your sub-headline. Remember to name yourself. She doesn't name herself, but name yourself as a journalist. So for instance, Sarah Mulholland writing for The Guardian language supplement or something like that. So-and-so writes for BuzzFeed. Make sure that you've got yourself named as a journalist. Have a sub-headline if relevant, of course. You might have a sub-headline. And then you need an engaging opening. You need maybe 3 different theoretical ideas, several examples that you're going to explore, put them into an order, make sure you work through them, topic to topic, explaining them, evaluating them, presenting them in a way that kind of surprises your audience or presents them with new knowledge in an entertaining way, and think also about your engaging conclusion as well. When you've done that, do the same thing and go through as we've done here. Indicate where you've used your AO2, that's your theory and your terminology, and indicate where you've used your AO5 intentional devices to position the audience, to engage, satire, irony, subversions, headlines, those kind of things. Okay, good luck.